Why environmental microbiology?
Yeah, environmental microbiology. Well, environment. We are environment. Without environment, we can't exist. So we need to understand our environment. And I feel that microorganisms or microbes, microbiology, can help us do that better. And one thing that got me interested in environmental microbiology was the Adenike community area, where there are a lot of oil exploration going on in that area. And one way we can clean up the effects of oil, because what happened is that multinationals, after drilling crude oil and everything, they put in the water into they put in the waste into the water. And this can cause pollution, of course. It can cause, it's toxic for organisms that are staying there. Human beings, they will eat fish from the same water, and which can cause cancers. So one of the ways we can reduce the effects of the waste of the water is we can use microorganisms to mop up the toxic substances.
You said Adenike community and oil. The wash down from the Niger Delta, you mean, or?
Yes, the Adenike community is the coastal area, so there's a lot of oil exploration. So there's the Adenike community, there's the Niger Delta, they're all around the same area, the Makoko community. So there are a lot of multinationals that are there. So one of the ways we can actually reduce the pollution in that area is to employ microorganisms.
How would you assess the understanding of Nigerians as regards climate change?
I think we have not really embraced the idea, and it's very simple. We have a theory, it's called the pain theory. And that's because, we don't respond to things that don't give us pain. So P can stand for personal. If it's not personal to us as Nigerians, we don't care. So for instance, there's a flood that happened, I think, in Benue State. Yeah. And there's hurricane going on in other parts of the world. So as Nigerians, it's like, oh, so far it's not happening in my backyard. Why should I care? So if it's not personal, people don't want to care about it. Then in the pain theory, the A is abrupt changes. So the effect of climate change is not something that people can see. And when people can't see stuff, it's hard for them to believe in it. But, like the effects of climate change is, you want to look at something that happened maybe 20 years ago and look at the effect of now. A lot of ice or glacier ice are melting. But some people that were not born 20 years ago would not see that. And I think that's, people respond to things that are, and then the next one is high, the immoral. As a religious, we're religious people. So we like to respond to things that are more of, that immoral in nature, the things that are popular now. In Nigeria, you want to talk about religion, you want to talk about tattoos, dreadlocks, homosexuality. People want to respond to that immediately, but when it comes to just climate change, it's like, yeah, whatever, what's that? And then if it's not happening now, which is the end of the pain theory, then we don't care. Another thing is also, I think, is about the Maslow theory of the hierarchy of needs. And the thing is, for you to talk about climate change, you need the basics. And as an average Nigeria is still at the physiological needs. We don't even have that. The physiological needs in the hierarchy is water, for instance, water, shelter. You go to the next one, security, light, And we don't have that as, people still rely on, pure water, sachet, potable water to get access to clean water. People still, there's no lights. We still have to use generators. So when you're telling people that are still striving to get basic necessity of life to do something different, that climate change is real, that means, dispose your waste properly, for instance, use solar, but solar is not affordable to everybody. So I think that's why Nigerians are not really taking it serious, because they've not seen the effects of it. And even if they see the effect of it, they will probably attribute it to some witchcraft, or, if there's any flood that is going on anywhere, they probably say, oh, they've seen those community, they've sinned against God.
Do you really think those are the reasons that Nigerians are not taking climate change seriously, or because of lack of understanding of the issue?
I think if you want to get Nigerians to act on anything, one way is to give them incentives. I think most people don't see any incentives in terms of what do I stand to gain. That's the first thing. When you ask a Nigeria to do something, the first thing that comes to their mind is, what do I stand to gain? And that's because most people lack that basic necessity. So I think one of the ways, there are a lot of organizations that are giving, for instance, in terms of waste, they will give, you give them your waste and they'll give you money in return. And people are beginning to respond to that because now, it's no longer about waste. You can carry your waste and then take it to a company and they will give you cash back.
There is also this bias amongst the people that climate change is just one of those Western conversations, and so how would you react to that?
Climate change is science. It's simple. It's not something that somebody tell you to go and that you're not seeing. We're already seeing the effects in Nigeria right now. We're seeing the Lekki. Recently, I think there was lots of flood in Lekki, and these are man-made. These are caused by humans. This is not God that is punishing Lekki people for being rich or according to popular opinion or whatever it is that people are thinking. So a lot of people, even, it's not just a Nigerian thing, even foreign countries. I think there was a research that was performed, I think by NASA recently, and they believe about 65% people think climate change is true, but about 35% can't really connect to the idea of with the idea of climate change. So it's not just a Nigerian thing. Even some presidents don't believe in climate change. Like I said, if you can't see the impact immediately, then you're skeptical about it. But we should start looking at our environment, even the weather. Look at the weather in Nigeria. Before you can predict rainy season, before you can predict dry season, but now you can no longer predict. Sometimes it can rain for 7 days. Sometimes it might not even rain at all. So the effect is there already, and we need to start, like I said, taking it seriously.
In Nigeria particularly, we've had the one in Lekki, the one still ongoing, people displaced already in Makurdi, and other parts of the world. What do you think is responsible, for all of these things?
Yeah, good. I think let's look at it from a local context. And I think for Nigeria, I think the major big problem is waste management. An average Nigeria would take pure water, the sachet, and just drop it on the floor, or plastic bottle water, and just drop it. And what we forget is if everybody is doing that same thing, the accumulation of it can cause a ripple effect. And I think that is the major cause of flood in Nigeria. Besides, let's even forget science of climate change. Let's address it very simple. People just throw their waste anywhere, and the accumulation of those can block a lot of drainages, which won't allow easy flow of water. So anytime there's raining season, those waste will block it, and that's what we have, why we have flood. If you go to the highland, look at the water, when you're, I'm not really from Lagos, but when you're moving from the mainland to the highland, you see the water is dirty. You see a lot of waste in the water, and it's not supposed to be. In developed societies, the water and a lot of places that are highlands are tourist attraction, because when you see water, it should look like, it should feel so serene and bluish. But look at Lagos Island water. It doesn't have that bluish, sky blue color, and that should tell us that it's very highly polluted. So I think if we can solve the issue of waste in Nigeria, it would reduce drastically the flood that we're saying.
The Lagos state government, for example, has been erecting structures around lagoons and stuff. So what are the implications of these, human activities, particularly with those living in the waterfront communities?
Yes, I think one thing that we don't really carry out before we start building projects is environmental impact assessment. We have to look at the direction of which we have our buildings. For instance, if you're building a structure that will block easy flow of water, we don't care. Nobody, it's just a matter of somebody will buy a property, go to the land people, internal revenue, I don't know, the people, then bribe them, get a plan, and just build. Nobody goes there to check out what is the impact of this place on the neighbors. And unfortunately, the people in that are living in the waterfront are the victims now because they're poor. They don't really even know the science of all these things. So people are just building anyhow. And I think there should be regulations to where you can put your building. What is the effect of your building on the people that are living in that particular community? So I think the whole Nigerian problem is still boils down to the basic thing of corruption, laws, and there's one thing to have a law, it's another thing to make sure it works, and we don't have that going. I think that is a major problem.
The people living in the Makoko area now, what can they do to at least be able to live with all of the damage that's been done to their community?
Unfortunately, they cannot really do much as a community if the people living in the luxury or the government, the Lagos government, is not thinking about them. At the end of the day, they're always going to be, like I said, the victims, which is quite unfortunate. They can't do anything to help as long as they keep building those skyscrapers without the environmental impact assessment, without the consideration of the people. There's nothing that is going to be done. But now, at least, we're getting the conversation rolling. Now that it has actually happened to the luxury part, now people know that it's not just the people in the Makoko community that are vulnerable. What they also can do is they can, I hope, they can stand up for themselves. I hope they can probably, I don't know, petitions, I don't know if they really do work, but if they can come as a community and get maybe the international community to do some kind of documentary to shed a lot of light so that people can hear their voice, then maybe that would stop. And you can never underestimate the power of social media these days. A lot of things that we think, somebody will just post a status and a lot of people will share it. So I feel like as we can advocate for this community by just telling people their stories, going about meeting them and just interviewing them and seeing firsthand how this is affecting them, and calling out the government and calling out the people, the private sectors, on the impact of the buildings on this other people.
Green Campus Initiative.
Yes.
What really about?
Yeah, the Green Campus, we started out with the Green Campus Initiative, and it's just to really encourage university, we're focused on university students to go green, because we feel that, or secondary school and university students, we feel they are the future leaders. And we feel that people, we're talking about celebrities now, they've already formed they have their own opinions already. But we can start with people that are still in school and shape their way of thinking. So that's the Green Campus, just educating young people to be environmentally conscious and to be socially responsible citizens.